My first thoughts, when you mentioned the title, The Post-Human World and the End of Evil, was that perhaps you meant the conscious opposition, the battle against the New World Order agenda of transhumanist brainwashing, and the reference to the end of evil being the elites twisting everything upside down in regard to terminology, i.e. good being evil and vice versa, evil being good, the elites turning it upside down. I know you plan to not concentrate, talking about the talk now, to not concentrate on the mechanics of transhumanism, but to delve deeper to the core understanding necessary to protect oneself's mind from what you term psychic pollution. Can you expand on that a little more?
Well, that's where we need to go, and I think we're all pretty much familiar with the gadgetry. I mean, we have to be. I mean, the movies have been showing it for at least 30 years, going back to even 2001 and Space Odyssey and Star Trek and fantastic films. Even going back to the Doctor Who's, for goodness sake, and the Blake Sevens. I don't think anybody can be in any delusion about what it means to be a robotic human being. But when the focus is on the technological aspect, we forget about the ideological aspect. So my work is on posthumanism is almost exclusively on the ideological aspects. It's how we as slaves become, like we say, listen to the inner tyrant, and how we buy into this globalistic agenda. Nothing that they do is without our assistance. And it's to give tools of immunity to those who really do want to say, yes, I am continuing the process of graduation to be, a knight in shining armor. I want to continue this fight. And so just in my life, as I've had to learn these things, it's time now to communicate them more largely to a larger audience, because it's like gradation. There are initiations even on our side. You may start as somebody who says, I want to fight this global evil, but there's lots of challenges that come along the way. So if you want to continue in that process, you need to be continually graduating with deeper forms of knowledge. You start here, you move here, you keep going.
Well, the talk is the post-human world and the post-human world and the end of evil. I'm trying to clear my mind to a subject. It must be a big thing for you. That's what I want to know, because there are many subjects doing the talk, the all-day thing. I mean, there are many subjects that in your series of works you were excited about covering first, but from speaking to you before in our last couple of interviews, you made it clear that it was essential to lay the groundwork the groundwork for where you are today, where you're at today. This all-day event has the groundwork in place, and you've mentioned that for those who've sweated and done their homework off your initial teachings, so to speak, this all-dayer is a milestone, as you say. You've prepared the field, you've removed stones, and for those who are ready, it's the next step. What is the next step, Michael?
Well, technically, it's the arrangement of the evening, of the day. When you do other talks, you're extremely confined. So even though I've got the solutions, and I'm very satisfied with how I've always done it, whether it's on a radio show or whether it's on a stand-up talk in a venue, I'm satisfied with what we've done so far. It's just that I've always wanted to tip the balance more so that we have less time for the preliminaries and a lot more time for the solutions, so that they can almost all be covered. And then, of course, as subsequent months and years go by, I've scripted more solutions. I've made them clearer, so it turns out there's even more. So it's even more of a need then to structure the presentation that way, not just leaving solutions to the last 15 minutes or the last DVD or what have you, but trying to spend most of the time getting into that. And also, my solutions, as I say, are quite novel in many ways, and therefore require a little bit deeper explanation. I've said so many times that we're here to develop our soul. The soul is not, the spirit is not even something we're given at the time of birth. We're here to develop it and make it. So those are quite abstract comments to people, and one needs to fill that out. There's a section on children where there's a certain essential things that need to be brought into the lives of children, not taught to them, but brought out of them. And they're there to be brought out of, just like everything else is brought out. So if you can bring out bad things, you can bring out good things. And once those things are spoken, once we've been able to discuss and investigate those things that I'm bringing to the table, at least we'll be eye to eye. I'm certainly not saying that everybody should believe what I say, but I think that we'll be on eye to eye about, okay, this man believes that evil as we know it can completely end. It's a phenomena, and it has roots, it has an origin, and that's what we'll do in the earlier part. We'll look into the origin of evil. We'll cover that in great detail to try and remember, my theories on evil are quite alternative. They're not scientific and they're not religious. They come from the myths and legends. They come from a lifetime of studying what the myths and legends has had to say. That's straying, obviously, into certain theology. I mean, I don't rule the Bible out. The Bible's fantastic. It's got some fantastic allusions. But unfortunately, most of those allusions predated Christianity, so that's what the average Christian needs to understand. But nevertheless, as a history book, as a book of the conflict between good and evil, it's wonderful to use that. But mostly myths and legends is where I go to look for the secrets of psychology. Why the ego is the way it is. Because it could be so many other ways, right? What the self is and so on, this dynamic. And then slowly morphing it as we go through the day. It'll just be slowly morphing it, blending it with the more modern psychology. It's the same subject matter, you're just using a different language for it. So that then when we come up to the final part when we're talking solutions, nobody can be saying to me, it was just so abstract and religious, or it was so mystical and abstract. Michael, I couldn't get what you were talking about. I use the psychological, lexicon because everybody can understand it. From whatever background you come from, if you've got a thing called a brain, if you have eyes and ears, and if you're anatomically a human being, then there's no way out by saying, well, that was really bizarre, or I thought I was going to come here and hear you speaking about, Flash Gordon coming to help us and our brothers from another planet, and the higher ascension and the light, the divine light coming down to just save us all. Meaning, yeah, your ugly ass doesn't have to do any work. Is that what you want to hear? Well, you're not going to hear it at this talk or ever from me. This is going to take work, a certain kind of work, and it's divine work. It's very special work. It's holy work, and you should be glad to do it. It's an adventure of awakening. It's not something pernicious that, oh my God, I got to get up. No, the rest of your life you can say is a bore. This is the real spiritual work, and therefore people should want to do that work. It's marvelous. It's creativity. It's the passion that Van Gogh had. It's the passion that you hear in the Beethovens of this world. What would our world be without that passion? What would our world be without that sadness and that sorrow that created all those masterpieces? So the person who comes along there with their big New Age sticker, you see, trying to denounce my work because it's too dark, Michael. Then all you got to do is swing around on your little heels there and take a hike and go off and find some guru to sit in front of or some mushroom to crouch under and turn off your brain and turn off your heart, because you're a human being and you should not tolerate injustice. And you should be absolutely, drunk for the answers. You should be so insatiably desiring of the answers to the mystery of yourself. They're not the mysteries of society. They're not the mysteries of the Illuminati, the mysteries of how to politically create harmony on this world. Those are more secondary fruits of the tree. First, you got to know how to plant the seed. So my work is going to go into that, and my alternative view of evil, I think, is absolutely crucial for people to get their heads around that, and then see how it's evolved in a direct line. Find out what its ingredients are. I call it the anatomy of tyranny, looking at the anatomy of tyranny. And the reason why we look at it is because Big Brother has the chart on his wall. Big Brother has this instilled in his mind. He is completely cognizant of the exact detailed anatomy of tyranny, how it works, how you control masses of people, how you get them to control themselves, and so on. Now, we have the vital ability to be able to awaken it this time, but you're not going to be able to awaken it without that graduation. You start one place, just like I've done in my own individual life, and then you start moving forward. You gain new tools. It's like arming Perseus. But you can't be cutting the Medusa's head off with, a plastic fork. You have to have the right tool, the right kind of, saber. And you have to have the right protection. So there's a graduation in the weapons we're using, a graduation in the understanding that we have, deeper and deeper and deeper. And it's not something pernicious. It's not something to be shivering with fear about. It's absolutely magnificent, because that's what we're here for. And therefore those tools then can be brought in later on once we've grasped it. Then by all means, somebody goes and shares it with their loved ones and shares it with the children, or brings it out of the children. The children already have it until we stamp it out. Because in the lives of most children, as I've already repeated, and I'll repeat again, we are the tyrant. So now a tyrant cannot fight a tyrant. A thief cannot be jailed for stealing from a thief. So this is the problem that we're in, not to mention that we're all, in the end, fighting with the weapons that they've been handing us. We are the creatures they've made us. And there's no immunity there. Fighting with the weapons that they've given to us, or fighting in an inauthentic way when you're weak, is useless. You're actually going to empower them all the more. There's many metaphors and movies about this, about how much you shoot at this thing and it just gets stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. It's feeding off your ignorance. But there is one inviolate weapon against tyranny, and that's knowledge. And that is, it's a simple rule in one way. And that person, knowledge isn't just handed to you, you know, in one go. It's an evolutionary process. It's like going through a maze, going through a labyrinth. And it's a journey of discovery that has both elating moments in it and also very deeply fearful, depressive moments. But you can't rule those two things out. They're there together and must be developed together. And the sum total is that when we're so empowered with this kind of knowledge, when we absolutely know what a self is and what a soul is, then we're immune. We're absolutely untouchable. Nothing can violate our presence. And then we have guidance from higher up. Then the real guidance is able to enter because there's not all this junk in the way. If you surrounded your house by all this clutter and junk, how can anybody, even the postman, get up the garden path? Well, it's the same with the spirit. We may talk about higher selves and divine guidance, and I know that that exists. It's there. But how dare we speak of that when our own house is in a state of complete and utter turmoil? When every drunk has been pissing under the stairs and fouling the place out. The walls of our own sovereignty, you see, are down. It's like what would happen on a biological level. We'd be infected by every kind of antigen imaginable. So that's where we are psychically and emotionally. Our emotional and psychic doors are wide open, and they have been all our years. And there's an immense fallout from that, both in medical health, mental health, and also an emotional disturbance of people today. And that weaker Pillsbury boy, that weak, you know, plasticine creature that we've become emotionally and psychically, that's the creature on strings. That's the lunatic you met saying, you are not meant to smoke here. I will report you. That's the very people you're going to be working with in their jobs. That might even be the person somebody's marrying, for God's sake. That is the trouble. We're surrounded on all sides by these weak, psychically weak, infirm people. The big brother can just push around, move about like a golf ball, from a shuttlecock from one place to the next. And that individual lacking systemic sovereign power, what does he do for his stability? I've been saying it from day one. He leans on everybody else. And that's your herd, that's your hive, that's your collectivity. And the big brother just comes down and says, global village, done deal. Thanks, mate. Thanks, world. We've gutted you psychologically, archetypally, and you're so weak that you're crawling around like a headless maggot. You don't even know what's going on. And so you lean on everybody. It's a big cluster. All this nonsense about oneness that you hear about in the New Age movement. Oneness of what? Oneness? A giant paper mache, hideous Quatermass monster of broken cells? You're going to sell that to me as being the solution? I don't want to see a broken shard saying, hey man, we're all one. I want to see a man standing on his feet, tall, his head in the clouds and his feet deeply in the earth, remembering his ancestors, remembering his history, strong on his mountain, not needing gods to be propped up or other human beings and their foibles, not becoming dependent on others or, you know, himself desiring that others become dependent on him. Only when you have that kind of sovereignty and individuality can you take on the vermin that feed off of this. I've said before, if you see rotten meat, don't blame the maggots. If you see the sewer with all the rats, that's because that's a natural phenomenon. So if you see these vultures in the chairs of high places and the corridors of power, they're there for a reason. They're just there. We have manifested them. We have given them the power. They have no power. In fact, even in numbers, they don't have any power. And psychologically, they have no power. The power they have has been taken from elders, from people who are very, very clever, through sleight of hand and through sorcery, and also by our complicity.